Okay, we're good.
We're good?
Does this feel good to you?
Uh,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. Well, we'll start this over
Is that
again.
what we see? Because it looks like it needs to be moved back a little bit.
Yeah, her head's come off.
Yeah, her head's cut off.
Part of her head.
We want to do that. There we go, that's better.
Okay. All right. This ought to be interesting. Thank you.
People understand we have technical issues.
Well, don't we all have technical issues?
Right.
That's what life is about, I think, is technical issues. I would love to hear that or have access to that post that you got just earlier. And I'll share it later in the morning if you'll. It's on my phone.
It should be.
I love the way God moves through people, places, and things. Thank you, Angie. We'll look at that in a minute. But my talk title for today is called Ordinary Days. And that term came from a daily reader, a devotional book by Father Richard Rohr. I love Richard Rohr. He's the Catholic version of unity. I love what he has to say in the way that he shares it, because he shares it in such a metaphysical way that it makes perfect sense to me. I've never delved much into Catholicism at all, but the way this particular book is laid out, it's laid up in a liturgical calendar way. And one of the terms that he uses in this book called Radical Grace, he labels the days that are not in preparation for a liturgical season as ordinary day, followed by the number of the day of the year that it is, not the month and the date. For me, it was a bit confusing to begin with. The terms ordinary time and ordinary day really piqued my curiosity. And when my curiosity gets piqued, I can go down a rabbit hole faster than anybody can. It just gets me going. So I had to have an understanding of ordinary time, ordinary day for my own benefit. And so I had to ask myself, what is an ordinary day? What is an ordinary day? Do you experience ordinary days? A day that would be considered usual, normal, common, or plain? Those are the words that Webster uses to define ordinary. Most of us are not comfortable with ordinary explained that way, especially when it refers to a day. It sounds boring. It sounds like something I'd rather not be doing. And most of us will do most anything not to be bored. The term ordinary time may be misunderstood from the non-Catholic perspective. In the context of the liturgical year, the term ordinary does not mean usual or average. Ordinary here means not seasonal. In ordinary time, the Catholic Church celebrates the mystery of Christ in all aspects. That really got my attention. The mystery of Christ, celebrating the mystery of Christ in all aspects. The readings during ordinary time help to instruct how to live the Christian faith in daily living. This really answered a lot of questions for me and got my mind to really spinning. And I believe that is what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore endeavored to do when they began the unity movement. They gathered at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoons to look at what those who had gathered had received in the church service that they had attended on Sunday morning. They weren't in competition with churches anywhere. That wasn't their intention ever. That's not our intention today. They just wanted to show people that there might be a different perspective to what they had heard earlier. And I believe that's what we do. I think that everyone in unity needs to take a class in the history of the unity movement. Anyone who sits in that class leaves with a different perspective about unity. It answers every question that you might have about it. I love the class and I love teaching it. In fact, I think I taught it here many long years ago. And it reminds me that we stand on the shoulders of greatness. I think that Charles and Myrtle Fillmore did just what the readings during ordinary time aim for, instructing how to live our Christian faith in daily life. They focus the teaching on practical Christianity. My grandson loves that term. He says, "Grammy, that makes more sense than anything I've ever heard in my life." I agree with him. It makes more sense to me. Because that is the way they, Charles and Myrtle, believed that we are to live our lives according to the teachings of Jesus. That is the way they believed, that is the way they believed we are to live our lives and experience the fullness of God's grace. They taught that we are beloved children of God, that we all have a spark of the divine. We are heirs to the kingdom and all its riches. They approached the mystery of Christ from the metaphysical view so that we could learn from the teachings of Jesus how to live out our faith in our daily lives. Jesus told us in John 14:12, "Very truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do. In fact, will do greater works than these." We hear that quoted often, but do we truly believe that Jesus was talking about us? Ordinary you and me? Maybe Mother Teresa, Gandhi, or the Dalai Lama? But surely not us. The Fillmores believed that Jesus meant us to do the things that he had done. And they set about working to prove it and to show us how to do this in this world today. Jesus healed the sick and the lame, and so did Myrtle and Charles Fillmore. These two humble people followed the example set forth by Jesus to heal their own bodies and the bodies and minds of others as well through the power of prayer. Myrtle had been plagued with tuberculosis since she was a child and had resigned herself to the faith that she had witnessed in many members of her family of origin who had died as a result of the disease. She heard E.B. Weeks contradict that long-held belief when he said, "As a beloved child of God, you do not inherit disease." Everything in her life changed from that point on. In prayer, she was directed to love and bless every organ, every bodily function, every cell of her body temple. Myrtle took her healing practice seriously and set about a daily practice of prayer. She spent 8 hours a day sending healing energy of love to every part of her body. There was no begging, no beseeching, only affirming what she believed to be true, resulting in the total healing of her tuberculosis and malaria after 2 years. Charles and others had been witness to Myrtle's healing and joined her in seeking God's direction, God's guidance for his life, for their lives. He, being a businessman, couldn't devote 8 hours a day in prayer, but he began his own prayer practice at that time. He did have some doubts, but he had seen what he had seen, and he decided to spend an hour every night in his rocking chair by the fireplace. His experience was different than Myrtle's. He took to headquarters his concerns about business affairs and then left them there, realizing later that answers to those prayers came to him in his dreams at the time that it was needed. The archives at Unity Village are filled with testimonies from people that the Fillmores prayed with for healing and other concerns. The beauty of that prayer ministry that began well over 125 years ago is still in operation today. Thousands of calls, emails, and text, thank you technology, come into Silent Unity every day from people all over the globe that believe in the power of prayer and others whose lives have been touched by the prayers of Silent Unity. These anonymous prayer counselors work 24/7. You can call Silent Unity any day at any time. You can send an email, you can text, and someone will be there to respond. Is there any difference in the people who work at Silent Unity and the Fillmores? I don't believe so. I don't believe that there's any difference between those workers, the Fillmores, and you and I. The people at Silent Unity that take the calls or receive the emails do have some specific training in how to focus their prayers in a positive manner. The main key is that they pray because they believe in Jesus as the way shower. And because they believe, they know that their prayers are answered for the highest good in the situation at hand. Now, the question is, what do we do with ordinary time? The ordinary days that are before us. We're not planning for any liturgical celebration. The next thing on the liturgical calendar is going to be Advent. We're in May. It's a little while till we get to Advent. So what do we do with the ordinary time? The ordinary day before us? What are your daily practices that keep you focused on the presence of God within you? Hopefully, prayer is first and foremost in that practice. Today, our lives are so complicated that spending 8 hours a day in prayer wouldn't be possible for us, just as it wasn't possible for Charles Biltmore. But his dedication, his determination, we can all own. We can all learn from. Because at 9 o'clock every evening, he spent an hour in silence alone with God. He sat in his rocking chair, talking to God about everything or nothing. He prayed for an hour. In an article he wrote, he talked about his doubt, and I quote what he had to say. "I noticed, however, that all the teachers and writers talked a great deal about the omnipresent, the omniscient God, who is spirit and is accessible to everyone. I said to myself, in this babble, I will go to headquarters. If I am spirit and this God they talk about so much is spirit, we can somehow communicate, or the whole thing is a fraud." So he entered it with a lot of doubt and trepidation. So this self-proclaimed, hard-headed businessman with a family to provide for set about making contact with God. He said there was no enthusiasm about it, no sole desire, but a cold, calculated business method. He was there on time every night and tried every conceivable way to realize that his mind was in touch with the supreme mind. Tells me a lot. He knew there was a mind, something greater than himself, or he wouldn't have been there. As he said, with this cold, intellectual attitude, it is easy to understand why he didn't get any conscious results. Nonetheless, he kept at it, month after month. He mentally affirmed the words that others had told him would open the way until it became a habit. And much to his surprise, he rather enjoyed it. He began to realize that he was having exceedingly realistic dreams. For a long time, he paid no attention to them, because at the time, he was more concerned with his earthly business of buying and selling property. So naturally, the first connection that he observed between his dreams and his business affairs was after he had closed on a piece of property. He remembered that he had dreamed the whole transaction months before it actually came to fruition. He began to realize that his dreams were a mode of communication that had been established with headquarters. Charles Fillmore prayed, and his life changed, always for the better. Any doubt he may have had in the beginning was dispelled, and he became a true believer in the power of prayer. Nothing got in the way of his appointment with headquarters. If they happened to be at a social engagement in the evening, at 9 o'clock he would suggest that they observe 15 minutes of silence, which usually ended with everyone singing their favorite hymns. After they went into full-time ministry, there was always a stream of people flowing through his office. No one was ever turned away. He said very little, but he lovingly listened as they talked. This man of God always silently denied and always prayed. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore saw everyone as God sees them, perfect and whole, and they prayed that the individual might realize their own perfection and wholeness. Hear that well. They prayed that the individual might realize their own perfection and wholeness. When those people rose to leave after 15, maybe 30 minutes with either of them, they were often not the same desperate, morose people that had gone into that session. They left renewed in spirit and often renewed in body as well. The Fillmores, like Jesus, knew that healing was an important aspect of their ministry, but it was never their main focus. Their main goal was to teach others what they had learned, to share the good news of Jesus Christ's teachings with everyone who they came in contact with. They went about their way with such enthusiasm and zeal that everyone who came in contact with them took notice of their free spirit, no matter what their circumstances were. Financially, just like many of us, often struggled, not able to see how they were going to have their needs met. Charles Fillmore, being the businessman that he was, looked at many of those situations much differently than Myrtle did. She refused to hold one thought that they would not be provided for by their loving God. Charles credited her with their success because she never, ever allowed him to let doubt take a foothold in his mind. These two loving, gentle, dedicated, committed people left us with such a powerfully rich legacy of how to walk the spiritual path of practical Christianity as Jesus taught. That is what I believe we are supposed to do with ordinary time. To lovingly listen and pray. Lovingly listen to yourself. What do you need in order to experience your heart's desire? I spend some time every day lovingly listening to myself and try to respond with loving kindness. After my sister passed away in July, I knew I needed some help with my grief process because I was getting nowhere fast. I began to realize that for me, grief and guilt were like two sides of the same coin, maybe. And I didn't know how to process it. So I reached out to a minister friend of mine that was working on his master's degree in counseling. We met every week for several months. And we came to a place where we felt that we no longer needed to meet on a regular basis. I had found a place of comfort and a place where there was no guilt. I was able to let go of all of that. And all I have to do is to pick up the phone and make a call. He's always there. If something overwhelms me or I feel stuck, I never have to do life alone. I can never be anywhere that God is not. God is always there. And if there comes a time when I need God to have skin on, do you understand that? Yeah, sometimes I just need skin on God. I have a whole bunch of folks that are only a phone call away. Or I can get to, if I need a physical hug, I can get to quickly. That is a gift of this practical Christianity. I have spent a lifetime working on my stuff. And I think all this spiritual stuff began for me in childhood. I believe I've known that I could be, do, and have anything I wanted with God's guidance. It just has taken me a lifetime to get here. A whole lifetime to get here. I have co-created a life that I love with God. I didn't create it by myself. I'm a co-creator with God. And what a wonderful life we have created. Life is good. We truly do stand on the shoulders of greatness. And I am truly grateful for the Fillmores for opening the way for me to live my life, the life of my dreams. Now, did I dream all of this before it happened? No. But I can see it all as in perfect divine order. And now, we find ourselves at the beginning of summer. Have you noticed how different our spring has been this year? Who knew that it was going to be so cold, cool, wet? I remember the last few as being very hot, very dry, and very humid. But not this time. It's been different. The days are getting longer. You know the words to the song? Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. It'll all be here. It'll all be here in ordinary time. So just how will we approach the ordinary time ahead if it is to be used to instruct us in how to live out the practical Christian faith in daily living, to celebrate the mystery of the Christ? We have a lot of time ahead of us before Advent to come to the understanding of how it is to look for each of us as we lovingly listen and pray. and you have been handed a piece from Charles Fillmore. What's the title of it? I've already forgotten.
Sure remedy.
Sure Remedy. Yes. Thank you. And I would like for you to put that into your daily practice for the next month and see how it enriches your life. I'll be back the end of the month and we'll maybe talk about it again and what you have gained from it. So I'm giving you an assignment, and I will expect you to have something for me on the 28th. Thank you all for being here and being so attentive, and I wish you all namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you. While we have this mindset, let's begin our time of meditation.